Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic console compiler. Today we will look at creating CGI web applications. In computing, CGI, or Common Gateway Interface, is an interface specification that enables web servers to execute an external program to process either HTTP or HTTPS user requests. Such programs are often written in a scripting language and are commonly referred to as CGI scripts. But they may include compiled programs, and that's what we're going to create today, a CGI executable in the PowerBasic console compiler. So in order to test out our CGI applications, we need a web server, and we're going to be using the Abyss web server from Aprilium. I'll put links in the description below to where you can actually download this web server. This web server application has two variants. The first is entirely free, and the second is a purchased professional version. What we're downloading here is the free version, as it is quite adequate for demonstrating what we're going to be doing today, and even for running small company intranets. So I'm going to quickly step through the installation of this web server application on another of my computers, in this case Mini 001. I'm installing the web server on a separate computer in order to keep it quite separate from the computer we're going to be using as the user. And the CGI applications we're going to create will run on the web server, quite out of sight of the user on the main computer. So as you can see, the installation is quite quick to do, and what we're going to do next is to configure our web server so it will allow CGI applications to be created. So I'm first of all going to create a local folder on this computer to store our website, and we'll call that folder website. And I'm going to copy a couple of files from the Abyss installation into this new folder. This will give us an index page and also a graphic to display on that page, just for the purposes of demonstration. If we open that HTML file with Notepad, we can see what's actually inside it. And we're going to change the wording slightly in this index file so we can tell which one we've actually picked up. So we will change one section in here to say our page. So when the index page is displayed, we'll know which one we've actually read. So we can now amend the configuration to point the web server towards our new folder. And we can restart the web server to allow us to query it. So here we are on our index page, and it is actually saying our page. So we are getting the web server pointing at the right file. Our next task is to create a folder in our website folder for our CGI applications, and we'll call this folder CGI_bin. Next, we have to make another change to our configuration of the web server to add this new script path. This is a relative path to our website folder. Once this is entered, we can click OK. And now it recognises that the configuration has changed. We need to actually check this and then restart our web server, which we can do quite happily. We have two more tasks to perform. The first is to make an amendment to our Mini 001 server to allow the Abyss web server to communicate through the firewall. Once you have set this, you should be able to connect to the server, as we can see on screen. Our second task is to put some HTML files on the server to allow us to test the connection. So here we are connecting to our Abyss web server and looking to see if we can bring up its index page in the HTML pages folder. And there is an index page, and if we click on each of these, we can actually go to subsequent pages. The web page is of course coming up as not secure at the moment, because we're still only using HTTP. However, for the purposes of demonstration, this causes no issues. So we have successfully prepared a web server. Next, we can now go into the PowerBasic console compiler and prepare a CGI application. And here we are in the PowerBasic console compiler. So we're going to add 3 libraries to this application. The standard Windows 32 API, a special one for PBCGI, and also our file handling routines library. So with these 3 libraries in place, we're going to create our very first CGI application. So we're going to do that by creating a function called createWebPage. And in this new function, we're going to declare a local variable called HTML. This is going to hold our HTML string. HTML files delivered by the web server have a particular format. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And this is formed of a number of tags. And it's worth learning a few of these basic tags, as you can do a great deal knowing just a few of them. And now we're going to populate this string variable. The first tag on the list is HTML. You'll see the tags are preceded and succeeded with an angled bracket. HTML is the beginning of the document, and the /HTML tag indicates the end of the document. The body tag indicates to the browser that what follows is going to be the body of the document. And again, it's followed by a closing tag to indicate where the body script ends. The H2 is a tag to set the default size of the text that's about to follow. There are a number of these H tags which can be used to set different font sizes. I'm not going to delve into creating specific fonts. We're just going to do the absolute basics in this page. The next tag is a paragraph tag, which indicates to the browser that the text that's to follow should be in a paragraph by itself. And again, there is an end tag for the paragraph and an end tag for the H2 font size. So this is about the most simple web page you can possibly have. So now that we've defined our string, how do we get that sent back to the browser from our web server? Well, there's a function in the library we added, the PBCGI library. And this function allows us to write data back to the browser. So if we go for a compile, and our application has been compiled. And there is our application, CGI demo1.exe. Now I'm going to change it slightly so we can change the name of the application. We will put an override in place, so when it compiles, it will create an executable called welcome1. So if we compile that once more, and we will see welcome1 has now appeared in our folder. I've also created a shared folder on our web server to make it easy to release applications. So if we drag welcome1 into the shared folder, so that file now exists on the web server. So if we go to our browser and attempt to execute it, and here we are in our browser, and at the top of the screen you can see the URL, HTTP, the name of the server, the CGI bin, and the name of the executable, welcome1.exe. So if we execute that, we will see we're now getting a return coming back on our page. We now have a dynamic web page which says, "Welcome to our CGI generated web page." And if we have a look in our code, that's exactly what we asked it to send. So we have achieved our first objective. We have created an executable which will return an HTML string to the browser. So we will now create a second function that will return a variable. We'll call this createWebPage version 2, and it's going to do almost exactly the same as we did before. The only difference is we're using the time $. So whenever this application is run, it will return the time on the web server. So if we change our call to execute this, and we recompile. And there is our new welcome1.exe, so if we drag it onto the server, replacing the existing file, we go back to our browser, and we execute this once more. And there we have welcome to our CGI generated web page, generated at, and the time in hours, minutes, and seconds. So each time we run this, we will get a different time. So this proves it's coming back quite dynamically. So if we can return variable information, it means our website application can then do something quite dynamic. So let's create a third version of this function. Your application on the web server could interrogate a database or read information from files. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a data folder and a CSV file within that data folder. So if we have a look on our web server, there is our data folder, and we have two files in here. We're going to, in this function, read the myfile.csv. This contains a CSV file which we want to display to the user on the web page. This, of course, could be emulating data coming from a SQL Server database or from any other application. So let's create this new function. We're going to create some local variables as we're going to load that CSV file into an array. So we need to specify the actual file name and path itself. So as this application is running on the web server, we can pick up the path to the executable quite easily. And we're adding on to that the data folder and the name of the file. So next we are starting to populate the HTML string with the HTML and body tags and a paragraph saying output of data table. So now we're going to use another tag, this time a table tag. This will allow us to position all our text within a standard table. But first we have to get the CSV data into an array. But there is a function in our standard library which allows us to do that. And that function is read the CSV file into an array, taking two parameters, the name and path to the file, and the array we wish to populate. So first of all, we're going to add a table tag to our HTML we're building up. We're setting it to have border equals 1, which will show a border around all of our data. And next, we're going to do a for next loop to step through each record within the array that's been pulled in from that CSV file. And the beginning of each row within the table is preceded with another tag, this time a tr tag, a table row indicator. And then we'll do a nested loop for each column of data in that row. And here we're again adding to this HTML variable with another tag. The td tag is a data tag for the table. So we're specifying what's going to be going into a single cell in this table. And of course, it also has a tdn tag to say this is the end of the data that's going into that cell. And after we get to the end of the row, we can close off the row using a /tr tag to indicate to the browser this is the end of our data row. And once we have completed all rows, we can close off the table by using a table closing tag. Following that with the closing body tag and the closing HTML tag. So having built up this HTML variable, we can now send it back to the browser just as we did before in the previous functions by using the write CGI function. So if for some reason we were unable to load the CSV file into the array, perhaps the file does not exist, then we can send an error document in an else statement. Again using write CGI to send our custom string back to the browser. So before we go to our browser, we want to amend our call in the PB main function to go to version 3. So let's compile that once more, and we will copy the new executable into our web server. While at the moment dragging this file over is doing quite well, you may occasionally come across the problem where the web server has cached the executable file, and even though you've copied the file over, it's not reading it because it's taking it from the cache. If you encounter this, the easiest way around this is to stop the web server running and restart it. The web server is running as a service. Therefore, go into your services, locate the Abyss web server, and restart it. And back to the browser once more. So if we execute our command once more, there is our updated web page. We now have the title, output of data table, and the data table is sitting quite happily on screen. If this were coming from a SQL Server database, you could display almost anything in a table this way. So what we've done so far is to create all the HTML tags within our application. However, you may find it easier to have a template. This is a flat text file that contains all the basic tags that you need, and you can put some custom ones in which you can replace at runtime. So if we have a look at what we've got inside the data folder, we have a template.txt. If we open that up, we'll see a very simple web page with the HTML and body tags, beginning and ending, and some paragraph tags. And we've added some custom tags, one called header and one called data. So what we're going to do in this new function is we're going to load this template and return it as a web page, replacing these two tags, header and data, with actual information. This means you can create a template for quite a complex page and keep all the functionality in the template itself. Therefore, if something needs to change on the template, which is not requiring a recompile of your binary, all you need to do is to update the template itself. And of course, the template can be stored in your version management system. So let's create this new function. So just as we've done before, we're creating a local variable into which we're going to put our data. So we'll populate that first with pulling the information out of our template. Again, this could be done quite easily by using another function in our file handling library. This one is called binary file as string. It will take a path and name of the file we wish to load and place all the data in that file into our selected variable. So now that we've loaded the template, we can go ahead and replace these two custom tags. So we can replace this tag in our template by using PowerBasic's replace command. We're specifying the string of text we wish to replace, and we can say what we want to replace it with. In this case, I'm going to be calling a function called header, and that's going to punch into this template our new data. So there is our header function, which is quite simply punching in a paragraph tag, an H2 tag, and the words latest data, and the ending tags. So we can do the same for the data tag. And we will create a custom function to generate the data that's going to go in to replace this data tag. And we're going to base this on the data within our my.csv file. So this is going to look remarkably similar to the function we had earlier. We're populating HTML variable with the starting tags for H2 and the paragraph tag. We're then attempting to read our CSV file into the work array, and then specifying the table border, stepping through the array one row at a time, and populating the HTML variable. And once that has been completed, we can then close off the table, paragraph tag, and the H2 tag. If we cannot find the document, we say we're unable to read the data file. And the return of this function is the data we've been building up in HTML, either an error for the data itself. So if we change our PB main function to call version 4, recompile our application, and then we will attempt to copy this into our web server. So there is our new welcome exe. We will copy that into the correct folder, the CGI bin folder, replacing the existing file. So if we execute that once more, and there is our web page. We have latest data on the screen, and we have our table containing all the information that was in this CSV file. So in summary, what we've done today is we have created a web server on another computer using the Abyss web server application. And we have created our first CGI application, demonstrating different ways to get information onto our web page. Of course, this is a very simple CGI application. There's lots more we can do in future videos. For example, handling parameters, creating forms, and giving feedback to the user depending on what they've actually keyed in. However, we'll leave all that for later videos. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.